Hello again. Welcome back to the live version of Galapagos, Escape Galapagos, the final exciting conclusion of the book. Thanks for everybody for being here. If you remember, Ezzy, Luke, their father, and all the passengers on the ship were trapped by the hijackers, and they were left behind. Don't forget, you can send me questions here on Facebook, or anytime at El Prager at Twitter, on Instagram. But let's get back to the story and see what happens in the end. I'm going to read a little bit where we left off. As soon as the last of John's men left, it went dark. The only light in the room came from a faint red luminescence. The glow came from where the stringy-haired dude had been just before leaving. As he hoped she was wrong about what was there and what was creating the red glow, but in her heart she knew it was a bomb. They weren't going to just sink the ship, they were going to blow it to pieces, along with all the potential witnesses. That's where we left off. As he could hear people moving around and trying to break their bonds. A few passengers sobbed. Her father was fidgeting next to her, as he figured he was trying to get free of the ties binding his wrists and ankles. As he tried to break free as well, but it was no use. The ties were too tight and too sturdy. She was scared, but also angrier than she'd ever been in her life. She'd already crawled through giant tortoise turds, outrun a river of lava, and even jumped into shark-infested waters. And now a bomb? As he wondered how much time they had left. Could this really be the end of the new, adventurous, brave Ezzy? She felt like she was just getting started. Then she thought of her dad and Luke. She turned to her father and through her gag tried to say, "I love you, Dad, and I'm sorry for being so sarcastic and all the bad things I've ever done." They shuffled closer. Then Ezzy heard muffled talking nearby and bodies moving. It was Grandpa and Grandma Jones. She figured they were probably panicking, saying their goodbyes, or maybe he was having the heart attack she had worried about while they were hiking. And then, very unexpectedly, she heard Grandma Jones clearly say, "Phil, do you have your knife?" "It was in my sock, but they found it when they tied me up." "Oh, cracklins!" Ezzy didn't know what cracklins were, or what they had to do with anything, but she shouted through her gag, "There's a knife in my backpack." She figured it came out as a muffled, unintelligible grunt, but she tried again anyway. "There's a knife in my backpack." She'd slung the backpack over one shoulder just before getting out of the boat, and no one had noticed. Or the bad guys had just figured she had water and sunscreen in it. She felt someone nudge her. Using her teeth, Grandma Jones pulled off Ezzy's gag. "What did you say?" "My dad's Swiss Army knife and a flashlight are in my backpack." "Good girl." With some artful twisting of limbs and teamwork, the older couple opened Ezzy's backpack, dumped its contents onto the deck, and felt around for the Swiss Army knife and the flashlight. "Here's the light," Grandma Jones said, switching it on and turning it to shine on the area where they dumped out the backpack. Grandpa Jones immediately shuffled over to where the Swiss Army knife lay and rolled over on top of it. After a few seconds of grappling with the blade, he sat up. His hands were free, and he quickly cut away the ties at his ankles. Soon, Grandma Jones was free as well. She cut Ezzy loose and gave her a quick hug. "With that knife, you may have just saved us all." Ezzy, even though they were still in grave danger, Ezzy nodded with pride. The two of them began ungagging and freeing the others as fast as they could. Meanwhile, Grandpa Jones went to look at the bomb. "Okay, everyone, we have 15 minutes before this place goes boom. Where's the captain?" One of the officers who'd been freed spoke up. They took him off the ship. "Folks, me and the missus here are ex-military, and I'm happy to tell you we met during explosives training." "Whoa," as he heard Luke mutter. "Officers, if you would, go up and get ready to abandon ship. We'll try and defuse the bomb, but no guarantees." "On it," said two of the officers as they rushed out. "Do you need any help?" asked Dr. Schuyler. "Yes," Grandma Jones said. "I need you to get yourself, your kids, and the rest of these people out of here." Once everyone was free of their ties, the Schuylers led the way out of the engine room and up through the ship. All the lights suddenly came on. It was so bright, as he had to squint at first. She tried to remember where they were supposed to go to abandon ship. They'd done an emergency drill the first day. Luckily, her dad had paid better attention. This way, everyone, up to deck 4, amidship. 7 short blasts of the ship's horn and 1 long blast rang out. An officer came on the intercom. "This is definitely not a drill. Abandon ship." They didn't have time to get their life jackets from their cabins, so they went straight to their emergency stations. The crew began to prepare the lifeboats, which sat ready to be raised off their cradles and then lowered to the sea. Several life rafts were thrown overboard. Ezzy heard them inflate when they hit the water. She stood hugging and comforting Luke while her father did what he could to help what was left of the crew. As people started boarding the lifeboats, Ezzy wondered how much time they had left before the bomb went kaboom. 10 minutes, maybe? Dr. Schuyler tried to get her and Luke into the lifeboats while he helped the others, but they wouldn't leave his side. Aiden climbed in with his family, including his 2 sisters, who were cell phone free, and maybe for the first time on trip, uninterested in taking selfies. Finally, when nearly all the other passengers were aboard, Ezzy, Luke, and their father climbed into a lifeboat. There was still no sign of the Joneses. Ezzy figured they must still be trying to defuse the bomb. She made a mental note that if she was still alive after the next few minutes, she would thank them profusely and find out their real names. "Deploy the lifeboats," shouted an officer. "No," yelled Phil, also known as Grandpa Jones, as he ran up on deck. Seconds later, he wound up and threw something hard as he could off the ship. It flew into the darkness and landed with a faint splash. Everyone sat in stunned silence. Seconds later, a deep boom echoed through the sea, and water gushed upward. The bomb had exploded underwater. Phil hugged his wife, who had joined him. They were both breathing hard. "Once I figured out there were no booby traps on the thing, we just pulled it off and ran." Everyone cheered and clapped. People began getting out of the lifeboats and hugging their family or the nearest person. Guests, officers, park rangers, naturalists, and crew all hugged one another. Dr. Schuyler knelt down and wrapped Luke and Ezzy in his arms. "Thank God, I was so worried about you 2. "We were worried about you too, Dad," Luke said, and his father laughed. "Thanks for all the stuff you put in the backpack," Ezzy added. "It saved us." "So tell me everything. What happened?" While they explained what happened on the island and how the park rangers found them, the ship's crew quickly got back to work. The officers and park rangers went to the bridge to contact the authorities. "You 2 are amazing," their father said. "I am so proud of you. Your mother would have been proud too. I knew you could do it, Ezzy." Ezzy smiled. She was proud of everything she'd done that day. She felt better about herself than she had in a long time. Maybe she was a lot more like her mother than she thought. Aiden was pretty amazing too, Ezzy said, looking around for him. He was with his family not too far away. She waved him over. Aiden said something to his parents and then joined them. "Thank you, Aiden," Dr. Schuyler said, shaking his hand, "for all you did out on the island." "Yeah, thanks, Eddie," Ezzy added. "No problem. Piece of cake." Luke wrapped himself around Aiden's legs. "Yeah, and thanks for the piggyback rides." "Anytime, sport." Ezzy wanted to hug Aiden too, but suddenly she felt overwhelmingly awkward. Instead, she asked, "How's your leg?" "It's fine, especially given the nurse I had to clean it." She felt her face flush. "Let me take a look at that, son," her father said. "You too as well. It looks like we've got some major cleaning up to do and a bunch of cuts to take care of. Guess all's well that ends pretty good." Aiden stared at the man like he was a little daffy. Luke and Ezzy laughed. All's well that ends well, Dad," Luke said. "But what about the kidnapped animals?" "I'm sure the authorities will track down John and his gang," his father replied. "Let's get you cleaned up. You must be exhausted and hungry." The minute he said it, Ezzy realized she was ready to drop and super starved. She'd even go for some raw fish. Okay, well, maybe not that hungry. She waved to Aiden as they went back to his family, and they headed down to their cabins. On the way, Father asked one of the crew members if they could get a seriously large late-night snack. Chapter 18, Survival of the Fittest. The next morning, Ezzy slept in. It was pure heaven. She probably would have stayed in bed longer if her stomach weren't growling like an angry bear after months in hibernation. She got up, dressed, and knocked on her father and Luke's cabin. No answer. They were probably already at breakfast. The dining room was packed and extremely noisy. Everyone was talking to one another and laughing, including the remaining real crew and officers. Ezzy figured having a shared near-death experience would do that. She made her way to where Luke and her father were sitting. They were at a table with Aiden and his family, along with Grandpa and Grandma Jones. When they saw her coming, they squeezed in another chair and placed it. "There she is," her father said. We thought you might sleep in throughout the whole day." "Probably would have if I wasn't so starved." Her dad turned to the elderly couple that had saved the ship. "We're quite honored to sit with our very own heroes, Phil and Gracie Smith." "Really? Their name is Smith?" as he thought. "That's almost as generic as Jones." She snickered to herself and said, "You were amazing last night. Thanks to you, we're not all fish food." Gracie Smith laughed. "Honey, you weren't so bad yourself. And we had no intention of becoming fish food. We just wished we could have stopped the whole thing sooner. Once we realized what was going on, we looked for an opportunity to do something. But it was too risky. We didn't want to endanger anyone else." "Are you really ex-military?" Ezzy asked. "I just thought you were like old people." "Ezzy," her father said. "That's okay," Phil said, laughing. "One, we are old people, and it happens to all of us. And two, we do like to ham up the elderly thing and then surprise people by being quicker and more with it than they think." He winked at his wife and gave her a kiss. "Yeah, and yes," Gracie said, "we are ex-military. But sweetie, I can't tell you exactly which branch we were in," she winked. "CIA, Ines? Special Forces?" The Smiths just smiled. "No matter," Dr. Schuyler said. "We're all so thankful you were there. And I heard you three rascals had quite the adventure on the island," Phil said to Ezzy. "Yep, an adventure, all right," Ezzy nodded to Aiden and ruffled Luke's hair. Just then, Giovanna and Jorge came by the table. They each hugged the Smiths and said, "Thank you." Then they turned to Luke, Aiden, and Ezzy. "As for you three, you do know that you're not supposed to be on any island without a naturalist," Giovanna scolded. "And you broke all the rules about staying on the trails and disrupting the flora and fauna," Jorge added. But, as he stuttered, the naturalist broke into smiles. "Just kidding," laughed Giovanna. "You did great, and we'd love to hear exactly how you made your way from Urbina Bay to Tagus Cove." "Thanks for the arrow," Luke said. Giovanna bowed. "My pleasure. Now we've got to get to work and plan for this afternoon's excursion." She looked at Luke. "Lots of animals." "Oh, great," as he said sarcastically. Luke turned to her. "Sis, come on. The animals are cool. Look how much they helped us on the island." Yeah, she said. I think I can handle it, except for snakes, and maybe sharks, and maybe those booger sneezing iguanas, and definitely no more tortoise turds." And Luke giggled and put his hand over her mouth. "It'll be awesome." She nodded and hugged him. "Just kidding. The animals are cool. Well, at least most of them. As long as I'm with you and Dad, it will be awesome." They finished breakfast and went up to the stern deck. Overnight, the ship had cruised to Port Villamil and anchored just offshore. As they watched, two speedboats driven by men in official-looking jumpsuits cruised into view, heading toward shore. Following behind was a big gray Ecuadorian Navy ship. The ship passed close by and gave a blast of its horn. The captain from the Darwin Voyager, along with the other kidnapped crew, were on board and waved before getting back to the wave report, pointing to the back deck. It was loaded with crates and cages filled with animals. Sitting alongside them was a group of men with their hands tied behind their backs. "Woohoo!" Luke jumped up and down and waved at them. "Yeah," as he said, "they got him." She stared hard in search of John and thought she saw him tied up along with the other men. Even though he probably couldn't hear her, she shouted, "Guess Darwin was right. Survival of the fittest." Her father added, "Crime doesn't play." "Pay, Dad," Luke said. "Crime doesn't pay." "That too," he said, grabbing Luke and Ezzy. "I love you guys. Hey, we've got some time this morning while we get things straightened out on the ship. What do you want to do?" Luke shrugged. "I think I'll go read that book you gave me on Darwin," as he said. "Seems sort of appropriate." Her father laughed. She looked at him and asked, "This was number 1 on Mom's Wonder List, right?" He nodded. "Honestly, Dad, I'm not sure I want to know what number 2 is." Father looked at them and said, "You're gonna love it." Well, that's it. That's the end of Escape Galapagos. But there's a very special section in the back called Real versus Made Up. And in it, I asked some questions of the readers like all of you. What do you think I made up? And what is real science from the Galapagos? So I thought I'm just going to read a few for you and see what you think. Animals perform their courtship rituals close to the hiking trails. Is that real, or did I make it up? Well, you probably got from the story and the pictures. That's real. The animals in the Galapagos are so well protected by the Galapagos National Park and the rules of the park that they'll do their courtship rituals really close to the trail and even raise their chicks in the trail. Okay, how about this one? Someone once tried to smuggle iguanas out of the Galapagos and was caught when their luggage started moving. Is that real? What do you think? Or did I make it up? It's real. Somebody actually got arrested when their duffel bags started squirming at the airport because they had tried to smuggle iguanas out of the islands. Crazy. There are giant tortoise tunnels from the lowlands up to the highlands. Real versus made up. I made that up. The giant tortoises do go up to the highlands during the cool season, but there aren't tunnels you can crawl through to get there. Okay, how about this one? A hawk dropped a snake on a visiting hiker. Can you imagine? Guess what? Real or made up? Real. A woman fell onto a carpet of marine iguanas when her walking stick broke. Real or made up? Real. And I was on the hike. Her walking stick broke, it was on Fernandina, and she fell into a carpet of marine iguanas, and we all thought, oh my gosh. She just popped up and said, my, they're rather soft. Oh my gosh, it was the funniest thing. So if you happen to get the book, you'll see there are more real versus made up questions in the back. But if you have any questions, right now I'm going to try and answer some live on here. We'll see if it works. Oh, looks like I got a couple already. Fantastic. Let's see. We've got one from Andy who says, what was your favorite part about writing the book? Oh, that's a great question, Andy. My favorite part about writing the book, I think, was finding ways to put some of the really cool animals into the stories and some of the things that have actually happened to me and other people in the islands. And then, I have to say, I also love the humor. I love laughing myself, and so I like to try and write things that I think will make other people laugh. And then I have to say, I also like the part about Luke and Ezzy and the dynamics between the characters and how they change through the book. So, gosh, it's hard for me to choose one or two things about the adventure that I like the best. But so, and I'll probably think of more as I go on. Okay, we've got another question here from Katie. Are there any other books where Essie and Luke go on more adventures? Wow, that is such a good question because I am working on the second book in the Wonderlist Adventures right now. And it will be another adventure of Luke and Ezzy and their father. And they go to the second place on their mom's Wonderlist. And I don't want to tell you where it is. It's pretty exciting. I'm having a lot of fun writing this. It's another place I've been. Let's see. It will be called Escape. I can't tell you what it is, but I'll give you a hint. It's a lot colder than the Galapagos, and there's a lot of ice. So if you have more questions, you can send them to me at Twitter at Prager or Instagram, or look me up on Facebook. I love answering questions, so please go ahead and send me some more. I want to thank the Florida Aquarium for hosting us, the Tampa Bay STEM Network, Celebrity Cruises and their fantastic Galapagos naturalists, so all the great images that I've been using, and also to Tumble Home Books, who published Escape Galapagos, where you can find it on their website or at any bookstore you can order it, or the next, Escape. I'm not going to tell you. So thanks, everybody. It's been great reading. Hope you've enjoyed it. See you next time.